Welcome to the second installment of Branded Intent. My name is Jay Alba,
And I'm Brian Colburn.
and our focus is to help content creators create better branded content.
We've both been working with content creators for 5+ years, and we decided to do this show to help new and existing content creators, entrepreneurs throughout their content journey. Jay, what are we talking about today?
Today we're doubling down on storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yes. Why is it important?
It's hugely important.
Why is it important?
You know, it is like we referenced last episode. Storytelling is how we communicate, and not only communicate, but understand what's being communicated the best.
Yeah, I like that. I've never actually verbalized it in that sense. I have more of a textbook definition or understanding of it. But yeah, I think the most effective or most interesting person in a room is the one that tells the best story. How do you do that on social media? How do you do that on this digital landscape that is 2024? It's difficult. It's difficult, especially with phones and cameras, new gear, new gadgets, new skills, everything. You're constantly having to evolve. So it's a dangerous landscape.
But you know what? Phone aside, tablet aside, microphones, lights aside, we still have our voice. We still have a story, and we can still tell it. Imagine sitting around a campfire with no electricity, no electronics, and sharing stories with your friends.
Sounds like a good Saturday.
It does.
Yeah. Well, the first point that I personally want to drive home, I said this last time or last episode. It was show, don't tell. You do not want to be the person that's constantly talking about yourself. You also don't want to be the person that reads a list of steps in how your service is done or how your product is made. A more impactful method of doing the same thing is to actually convey that same information through visuals, whether it's still or video media. So you want to show people, you don't want to tell them. The viewer will already make their own opinions on it. And honestly, people just want to be entertained at the base level.
Absolutely. You know, we're totally going off script now, so this is going to be awesome. The last Super Bowl, the round of commercials.
Oh, God. It was hit or miss for me. It was hit or miss.
You know, it was for me as well.
Yeah.
And let me share this with you. Right now, today, March 6th or 7th, I cannot tell you a single advertiser that advertised on the Super Bowl. Nothing was that memorable. But if you put 3 frogs on a log in the woods and one says Bud,
Why?
the other one says Wise,
Zer.
I can still remember that commercial for Budweiser. And that was in the 80s?
Yeah, it was before my time.
In the 80s. And that's how important storytelling can be.
Or at least one piece of media. So you have the opportunity with each piece of media that you produce. You have the opportunity of living in your customer or viewer's mind for decades, apparently.
For decades. And I wasn't even a Budweiser fan.
Yeah.
Unless Bud wants to sponsor.
In which case, that's a side conversation. And
hit us up, Anheuser.
All right. How to create a long-term story arc?
You know, it takes some planning. Yeah. It truly does. I mean, for example, this show, we already have 10 seasons outlined, and we're doing 4 seasons a year. We already have 2 seasons of episodes outlined, and that's the kind of planning it takes. But our intent is to take you through a journey to become a great content creator. So it takes that type of planning to tell a story long term. And if you're unfamiliar with a story arc, I'm not going to get into it. I don't know if Jay wants to or not, but there's tons of great books. And there's a great book called Retellable by Jay Golden. It's available on Amazon. It's on my bookshelf. I love it. I highly recommend it. He's actually come in and spoken to my show hosts for me to convey the importance of including story into their episodes. So I don't want to step out of my lane into his or into yours, because you're
No,
much more of a creative storyteller than I am.
story arcing is it's complex, but at its basis form, I mean, how would you, if someone asked you how your day was? So if you're lucky enough to be in a relationship and be with someone that you love and they love you, just on a personal note, when they ask you how was your day, how do you tell the story of your day? Do you say, oh, it was fine, or do you tell them, oh, there was a start, middle, and end, and at each of these phases there was 4 other sub stories that happened? Right. One response is going to elicit a far better interaction than the other. My girlfriend, she loves stories. I actually have gotten better at telling stories about my days just because she likes stories. I normally am minimal words.
And let me ask a question.
Yeah.
When you're telling her the story of your day, you set up a situation.
Yes.
That where there's controversy or conflict.
Yes.
And then that story escalates into rising tension.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hit the pinnacle of that arc to resolution.
Right.
Storytelling.
And this is
drop, we're out.
Very simplistic way of looking at it. The lateral is, what is your company's story for the year? How did they start? What friction points or pain points are they running into? A lot of that could be current event focused, right? So right now we have a lot going on in politics. We have a lot going on with our nation internationally. We have a lot going on in our economy. These are all opportunities to communicate part of yours or your company's story arc. No one cares about the hero that everything went smooth for. No one really cares about that story, right? This Disney movie Hercules. No one really cared about him up until he started fighting his task. He started knocking down his tasks, right? It was the point at which he had pain points and friction and a motive. He had a goal. So how do you do this for your business? Well, you have to first find a problem that you're trying to solve. The same thing with any product dev. You're trying to solve a problem. If you do not have a problem to solve, you don't have a story. If you do not have hurdles to solve that problem, you don't have a story. You just have 2 points. You have, I want to do this and I did it. That's not a story. That's a lateral sentence.
It's a tweet.
It's a tweet.
I'm sorry. That's an X.
So, but yeah, a good example of a story arc was Stephen Covey, right? That was,
great motivational speaker. I want to say I was introduced to Covey in 92-ish. His book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is one of my favorites. Not only is it on my bookshelf, but there's a flashcard series that is on my bookshelf as well. And
that's kind of cool.
He also, under his brand, developed this, I shouldn't say developed time management, but the Franklin Covey Day Planner. It was pivotal in the 90s where everyone carried this day planner around, tasks, contacts, appointments, project planning. I worked for a company that sent me to 3 days of day planning training in the Franklin Covey system.
Is there an app for that now?
Now there are.
Oh.
Plenty.
Okay.
And the root of day planning is still the same. It was just the system and how he articulated it. And I don't want to say professionalized it, but
he cornered the market at that time.
At that time. And Franklin Covey passed in 2012, but Franklin Covey, the company, still lives on. The products still live on. His books still sell, and they're still relevant to this day. His brand story has outlived him, which I think is kind of cool.
That's a long-term story arc right there.
It's a very long-term story.
There's no end in sight.
And another one of my favorites is Henry J. Kaiser Steel. This is back in 1882. And I'm going to look down at my notes because I don't want to get dates wrong. Born in 1882, in 67, He had the Kaiser Steel Foundry right here in Southern California, and his steel company helped produce many of the ships during World War II and the war effort, which was pretty cool. That company went defunct in 83. But when you have such a large steel company, people get hurt. So what he did is he brought doctors and nurses onto his property to treat these injuries, which was the foundation of Kaiser Permanente today. Now, Jay, I want to ask you, have you ever heard of Sidney Garfield?
I have not. I've heard of the Garfield cartoon.
Cartoon.
The newspapers.
Different guy.
Yeah. Different.
An actual human, not a cat.
All right.
He was the guy that started Kaiser Permanente with Kaiser. But we know it as Kaiser Permanente, not Kaiser and Garfield. So one's brand story, again, outliving him, still in play today. I mean, I have notes here, 700 medical offices, 39 hospitals, over 300,000 personnel, including more than 87,000 physicians and nurses.
I don't even want to think about what their monthly overhead is.
But what an awesome brand story.
Yeah, and the fact that it's still living on and still growing and still going. That's actually insane. It's insane to think about. I don't know of any other companies that operate like that.
It's massive.
I think a key point to take away from that, though, is you have to stay consistent. I don't know if Kaiser, what was his first name again? Sorry.
Henry.
Yeah, I don't know if Henry J. Kaiser knew back when he founded the hospital that he was going to be running for a century plus. I don't think that he knew what that story looked like past that first, 1 to 5 years. But the thing to highlight is that he started and he stayed consistent until he got to a point where he was able to actually define what his story was going to be. And I think that's kind of the scary part as far as creating your story is people think, or other brand developers think, that you have to have the end result mapped out and you have to stick to it. I mean, I like to do a lot of laterals that aren't in business because it's a little bit more approachable to a majority of people. Any family road trip you had as a kid, or let's say you have kids, any family road trip, you have plans, you have itineraries. How often do those go according to plan, right? So it's good to have a heading as far as what your story arc, what you want it to be. And it's good to think about that. I like to think about it quarterly. I don't try to think, especially right now with how fast things are moving. Quarterly seems to be where I'm at. Some people think in terms of decades. I'm a quarterly guy, but figure out what your story is, and you can plan accordingly. And be open to it not going exactly the way you wanted it to, but do everything in your power to make sure it goes as close to it as possible.
While Jay was just speaking, I had a thought that's off script. And if you listened last week, you heard me speak about values and mission statement. And I shared a mission statement for one of my verticals. However, I was thinking of what I wanted to follow that piece up with, and authenticity. Multiple people have told me sometimes my jokes are a little dry and they fall short. But you know what? That's who I am. And if my values are in place and my mission statement's in place and I'm being authentic and what I say supports those values and missions, I'm me, and this is the authentic me. And I understand I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Ask my mom. However, if I'm being me, it's easy to tell story. It's easy to stay on point. I understand my values. I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And love me or hate me. As one of my hosts says, if you don't like me, swipe left. There's another podcast waiting.
It's bridging two different platforms. I like it. Yeah, I mean, authenticity is huge. In the landscape of social media, it's pretty easy to hire a photographer, or videographer for $500, $1,000 a day, depending on where you are. If you're in LA, you can do it for $50 and a hot dog. Um, but it's pretty easy to hire someone to create content for you that portrays you as one thing, even though you do not live your life like that, even though you don't show up like that. That is, I mean, no one likes anyone who's dishonest or disingenuous, and you don't want to create content that doesn't reflect who you are. I'm assuming you are a person of integrity, which is why you're still listening. It's why you're still here. You're trying to improve or at least have a foundation to work from. Consistency is a big thing. Authenticity is I would argue bigger, right? If you fail on consistency, but you are a person of integrity and you are authentic in your how you communicate. And this goes the same with your business. If you failed your service for a couple clients, if you failed a product or something didn't work out right, you don't want to be the company that says, tough cookies. You want to be the person that goes above and beyond to make that right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, authenticity is a huge thing, and how you communicate and entertain people. You want to be as authentic as possible. You don't want to lie about it. Otherwise, I mean, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I do know every week there's a story of someone who's been shown or proven to be a fraud. Mm-hmm. We see it all the time in social media. It just
I thought you were going to say politics.
No,
save that for another show.
Things are starting to converge. That's for sure on social media. But how to connect with your audience through storytelling. Humans are, and I say this like I'm an extraterrestrial. Humans are emotional creatures. We always have been. We always will be. I think Buddha was the only person that was able to reach some form of enlightenment, but even then, I'm pretty sure there was still emotion attached to that. So we do respond to fear, pain, and joy. That seems to be the highest form of response for us. So if we can hear someone else's fear, pain, or joy, that encourages us to feel the same. So what does that mean as far as your communication with your company? Tone of voice and verbiage. How you communicate. I have bad habits that I've picked up through the surf community, which is why I'm not using textbook terminology. I'm a little bit more relaxed. I'm a little bit more on the slang side.
But that's the authentic Jay.
But that's the authentic me, right? Now, if I were to start pumping out just textbook terms, zero connectivity, it'd be very hard to connect with me. I'm sure right now with me tripping, it's kind of hard to connect with me. But your tone of voice and your verbiage dictates what your community or how your community actually connects with you as a person or an entity.
On that note, I have a military background. I have a public service background. And in that community, I'm the authentic me, but this is the PG version of Brian.
Yes.
And when I work with the majority of my clients, it's the PG version of Brian. When I step into that community, you're going to get a little bit different Brian, but it's
gloves off.
Gloves off. It's still the authentic me, but I get to turn it up a notch. I get to let some guards down. I don't have to choose my words as carefully. It's the PG-17, maybe sometimes R-rated version of Brian. You can have an awesome story that's developed for client A. That story is going to have to get tweaked for client B. It can be the same story, just told in a different manner, keeping in consideration the audience it's being spoken to.
And that's actually a really practical way of looking at tone of voice and verbiage. You wouldn't talk to your grandma how you would talk to, I don't know, your significant other, right? On a personal note, you probably wouldn't talk to those two individuals the same. Same thing as your manufacturers and your customers. You wouldn't speak to them the same. So,
right.
You aren't being disingenuous with how you communicate with either party. You're just being more contextual with how you do it.
And we're going to bring up some companies that have inspired us, that have influenced us along our journey. And we'll provide links in the show notes so you can check them out for yourselves and Last episode, we spoke about Patagonia. This episode, we spoke about Franklin Covey and Kaiser.
Mm.
Who are some other companies, Jay?
Well, I don't know about companies. I mean, I know they are entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs. Just bleep that one out. But I know them as people as they portray themselves on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So Alex Hormozy blew up in the last 4 or 5 years. His story is amazing. He's had an uphill battle. He's always been armored. He's always been prepared, but he's had an uphill battle for the last 10 years. And for the first 5 years of his entrepreneurship, as far as what's been expressed or communicated, he had nominal amounts of success and traction. He didn't really have an easy start. And I'm sure right now with the level that he's at, still not easy. It's just a different level, different type of hard. Gary Vaynerchuk would be another person that I look up to. Now, that is someone who I don't know if it was the 70s or 80s. I would assume it was the 80s, but he moved to America as an immigrant. Did not know English. His parents didn't. Parents, I don't even think, knew English. But his father started a convenience store,
a bodega,
yeah. But through Gary V being an immigrant, not really being able to communicate with other kids his own age, being more on the poverty side, that rather than being part of a family that had a lot. Because I don't know about you, but if I had to jump a country to another one and start from scratch, I probably wouldn't be, I wouldn't have a huge wallet.
Struggled as a student.
He struggled as a student, but he had a couple gifts. Yeah, one of them was farming attention, understanding where attention was, even at a young age. And because of that,
no, please, I want you to. I've got to.
No, because of that, he was able to help his father. Now, his father is no schlub by any means, right? To have a convenience store in New York and have it for decades is huge. Gary was blessed enough to be able to help his father increase his profits year after year after year. He talks about this in depth, both Alex and Gary talk about their stories in depth, but that is their brand story, and it's specific to their own personal brand. Now, their company brands, their business brands, those are a little bit more contextualized for what their service or product is.
Most definitely.
But once again, people buy from people. I don't know what Alex's companies are. I don't know what Gary V's companies are other than Vaynerchuk Media. But I hear their story. I know their story. I can relate to both of their stories. That's a personal brand right there.
One of my favorite Gary V stories was the lemonade stand.
Oh, dude.
He sees somebody with a lemonade stand and people are like, oh, I can do that too. Gary went, I can get my friends to do that. And he's driving a bike, lemonade stand to lemonade stand, collecting receipts, paying them for their time.
Well, not only that, but most kids would set up a lemonade stand right in front of their house in the neighborhood so their parents could watch them. Where's the traffic? It's not in the middle of the block. It's at the intersection.
He went to where the attention was and had a friend set up and work a lemonade stand.
Yeah. No, he's got some good stories. You should listen to some of his content between 2015 and 2018.
And you're going to get the authentic Gary V.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize he has over 6 companies between Vayner Media, Vayner Speaks, which is a speaking bureau.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He has V Friends and V Friends 2 now. One's NFT, the other
those are
plushie.
Crypto. Yeah. He has plushies too.
Yeah. I mean, he's all over the place, and it's awesome to see him succeed and inspire along the way. Who else? Franklin Covey we spoke about. Kaiser Permanente we spoke about.
Steve Irwin. If you were alive at all in the last 40 years, you would know that name. He was an animal rights, animal conservation, right? Almost tripped on that word too. He was very, very deep in animal conservation. Was it back in 2000? It was mid 2000s, I think. We ended up losing him, but his mission, his current brand is still living on through his family and his kids. Yep. But their mission statement was to help species of animals just continue to live on and not go extinct. And I think right now in Australia, I mean, they have, I don't even know how many acres of land they have, but it's designated and, just for animal conservation.
Yeah, I'm not sure of his personal story as well. So that's one. I'm going to click the link in the show notes and
Mm-hmm.
learn a little bit more about Steve. I used to watch the show on occasion.
Mm-hmm. But that right there was content production.
Right.
We think of TVs and TV shows and movies as, just entertainment, which they are.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a person like Steve Irwin, or let's say Alex and Gary decide they both wanted to create a show on the behind the scenes of what they do, those are all pieces of content. Those are all media,
Yep.
And it communicates and expresses their mission,
And
their mission
furthers
values,
their mission.
and furthers their mission.
Yep.
Yes.
Most importantly, well, you got any closing words? Because I think that's about wrapping episode 2.
If you are interested, I mean, this is kind of a shameless plug. If you are interested in learning how to brand yourself, I do have a course that I'm currently launching. If you go to jayalba.com under courses, you will see it there. It'll be DIY branding, personal branding development.
I love the fact that you chose to spell out phonetically your first name, but not your last.
Well, Alba's pretty straightforward. Everyone knows Jessica Alba.
And J? People don't know J?
I've had people say, "What? Just the letter J?" I'm telling you, man. I've ran through this my entire life. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, my entire life.
And I'm pissed when someone uses a Y to spell Brian. And I'm Brian Colburn. If you want to learn more about me, I've got a link to the Accountables Network down below. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.